Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. This is Greg Boots with Anderson Law Group and also Anderson Financial, and I'm doing a little bit of crossover today, looking at both the legal component and more the financial component in regards to getting our kids through school, not just saving for college, but minimizing the underlying cost of college. I deal with our clients in a lot of respects just in regards to their retirement accounts, and there's a direct correlation, as we're going to see through this presentation, in regards to the amount that we can minimize our college costs really benefits us from a retirement income plan standpoint. So just like the tax code, we have two different tax codes, one for the informed and one for the uninformed. The same thing holds true just in regards to college expenses. We have an informed buyer, and then we have the uninformed buyer. And really, when we're looking at college education, that's what you are. You're a buyer. And for most people, other than our home, our primary residence, it's the largest expense parents are going to incur throughout their lifetime other than their home. So you definitely want to take the time to become an informed buyer when it comes to college education. And so what we're going to be looking at through this webinar is we're going to look at the current college landscape, the funding and retirement savings dilemma, how those two balance out each other. We're going to cover the basics just in regards to the funding, what types of forms we need to fill out. Really important just in regards to the secrets of reducing that underlying cost of college, because college planning just isn't about saving money for college. It's about reducing the underlying cost of college. You really want to know the mistakes to avoid in regards to the college planning, the admissions, the financial aid minefields, and then we take a look at the very next steps in terms of proceeding forward in regard to your plan. So first, let's take a look at the current college landscape. So we have some real top parent concerns, and these concerns are countervailing to a certain extent. And number one concern that every parent has is that we're going to pass away before our kids are grown up. And then the next thing that we're really focusing on is in regards to saving for our retirement. And of course, we want to remain employed because that helps our overall financial security. But then the number four concern that parents have is in regards to saving and paying for college. And this is a direct opposite when we're looking at saving for retirement, because the more money that we spend in regards to college education, the less than that we have for our retirement income streams. The problem is that we have in regards to college costs is that the expenses are outpacing inflation. So we're seeing right now an average of about a 5% increase in the underlying college expense each year. And so when we're looking at a national average, the cost for a public university is right around $19,000. And then the cost for a private college is $42,000. Now, personally, I think that these costs are a little bit under. I just did an analysis for my son, Tristan, who's a junior in high school, and I really wanted him to go to, or I want him to go to Washington State University, where I went. And at the time when I went to Washington State University, this is 25 years ago, the tuition and room and board, it was all under $10,000. Now they're projecting that 2017, when he starts, if he does attend WSU, this is a state school. It's not, in the big scheme of things, a real prestigious college, but it's a great place to go to school. The projected cost of admission in 2017 is $29,948. And when we're looking just at that 5% increase over those 4 years, by 2020, ideally, if he graduates within that 4-year period, they're anticipating that the expense for WSU is going to be $34,668. So it's dramatically increasing. And so when we're looking at then the ballpark between public and private school, on the low end for public schools, we're looking at $82,000 for that 4-year period. And remember, it's not just tuition, but it's your fees and your room and board. And then on the private side, it's right around $181,000. Right now, nationally, there's over 250 colleges that charge more than $50,000 a year. Problem is that less than half of the students actually graduate within that 4-year period. In fact, it's within 6 years. Only 57% of the freshmen graduate within that 6-year time window. In fact, now they're even starting to track what the graduation rates are at 8 years. And so we're not really looking at, for the vast majority of college students, an in and out with a bachelor's degree within a 4-year period. For most students, it's taking 6+ years. And so we have to continue to factor in then that underlying cost of school on each of those annual bases. And that this is a cost just for one kid. Just imagine if you have 4 or 5. I have 2, so I'm basically doubling this cost. Actually, I'm more than doubling the cost just for the fact that my younger son is 3 years younger than Tristan. And so costs will be even more by the time Carson goes to college. So what we want to figure out then is, how do we go about adequately funding our college while still saving for retirement? It's a real balancing act. And in fact, 75% of parents say that they would sacrifice their retirement savings just in order to provide for that promise of a college education. So we're balancing helping to pay for college versus being able to retire in financial dignity. But if we don't do proper planning, then what will end up happening is we'll end up like these parents in the middle here, where we sacrificed everything in regards to our retirement to give our son or daughter a proper college education. We don't want to be in that position. We want to be in the couple on the right-hand side of the slide, where they're secure financially, their kids have gone to school, and they didn't have to sacrifice everything in regards to their retirement income needs. So if we're looking at here, years till retirement, so 15-year time window, which is roughly what I have. I have maybe up to 20 years because I'm 45 right now. If the average college cost is $78,000 right now for a 4-year expense, and I'm looking at an average 7% annual cost on the funds that I would have used for the college expense, I'm getting a 7% return year in and year out. Balancing that out of the college tuition going up 5% each year. For my son, for the 4-year college costs, it would be $78,000. I'm giving up within that 15-year time frame $180,000 in additional retirement assets. Now, like I said, Tristan's college is looking like it's going to cost more. So I'm right about in the $125,000 range. So I'm actually looking at then right around $230,000 in lost retirement expense. If I'm going to go to a private school where I'm up over to $215,000, that's $500,000 then that I lost in regards to retirement income expenses. Apologize, as normal when I'm doing a webinar. Well, we're having technical difficulties. Thankfully, I have my trusted assistant here, Amy, fixing that. Amy, why don't you just go to a single screen and we can get that taken care of. You know, when we're looking at a 20-year time frame, that's real depressing in regards to the impact that it can have as far as our retirement income savings go and our college investments go. So don't lose hope. There are opportunities then out for us. Because remember, planning isn't saving, but it's planning on actually saving on, not just for the cost of college. So just like with asset protection and tax planning, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. What you need to do is you need to know the ins and outs of the particulars when it comes to planning. And I apologize because now my slides won't advance at all. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Amy, I know you're listening on another computer. You need to come back in here because my slides won't change. So what we want to do is we need to be proactive then in regards to the saving on the cost of college. And how do we go about doing that really depends upon where we're at within the process. You have to know the ins and outs in regards to college planning, the application process, what forms to fill out, what financial forms to fill out. It won't go forward at all. See, all I needed was somebody under the age of 30, and she fixed it right for me. And knowing the ins and outs, it's a real complex topic, and it all is contingent upon your individual circumstances. So understanding then the basics of planning for college, we have two different stages within a child's life that we're looking at regards to planning. We have the strategic phase, which really is from birth up to age 16. And during that point in time, we're looking at capital accumulation, but not just capital accumulation in terms of acquiring assets in general. Ideally, what we're doing is we're acquiring assets that aren't going to disqualify us or be treated as a qualifying assets for aid eligibility. And then once we start to have a junior and senior in high school, then we shift over to the tactical planning stage. And with the tactical planning, what we're looking at doing is understanding what the college admission strategies are, how to successfully navigate through those maze of all of the financial aid forms and the various requirements. And the springboard in regards to all planning for college is what is known as your EFC. And what your EFC is that is known as your expected family contribution. And the reason why the EFC is so important is because that's the number that colleges use to determine whether or not you're eligible for financial aid. And when they're calculating out that EFC, not only are they looking at the parent's income and asset base for qualifying assets, but also the student's income and other liquid assets. This EFC, this is the bare minimum that you're expected to contribute toward college costs. And to help then determine what your EFC is you're going to need to start filling out some forms. And so most public schools require what is known as the FAFSA, the FAFSA. But also on the private side, and even some public schools require the CSS profile. And both of these are different forms. They're for financial aid eligibility, but they're used underlying then to calculate what your expected family contribution is. So we need to determine then or understand how we find out what that financial need is when the college administration, the college financial board is looking at what our out-of-pocket is. So first and foremost, what we want to do is we want to look at the cost of attendance, which isn't just tuition, but fees and books and supplies and room and board. And most of the time, people leave out altogether the transportation costs, the personal expenses. And then we have to subtract that amount from what our determined EFC is, our family contributions, the parent's income, the student's income, spouse's income if the student happens to be married. And those two numbers, that cost of attendance minus the family contribution, then that will determine what our financial need is to send our student, our child, through college. Here's an example. We fill out the forms and it's determined that the EFC for this family is $15,000. And so what we did is we took that financial need and it equals that cost of attendance minus the EFC. And so looking at two different types of colleges, we have a state university where the anticipated cost of attendance is $22K and a private college where it's $60,000. The EFC is the same in both instances. But when you look to the right-hand side in regards to the financial need, there's a huge disparity between the state school and the private school. With the state school, we only have a financial need of $7,000, but with that private school, there's a financial need, that gap of $45K. But what we're going to see here is oftentimes we can get the private college to be cheaper than a state-run university. So just keep in mind that your EFC, it's just the starting point for your out-of-pocket expenses. It's not the actual cost of attendance of college, because we have to then factor in the financial need and the gap that comes if we don't receive full financial need. So if we look at this public university where the cost of attendance for the first year is $22,000 and it's already been determined that our EFC is 15 grand. So we have a $7,000 financial need. And we're able to get our child a financial aid award via a federal student loan of $5,500. So then what we need to look at then is what our gap is. So our unmet gap between our need that we received and our EFC and the expected tuition, what ends up happening then is that our cost as a parent for this public university ends up being $16,500. Because remember, the EFC is just a starting point. It's not the true cost of attendance. Now, let's look how that would play out in regard to a private college. So our EFC still is $15,000. Now we have a financial need of $45,000. Well, within private schools, they have much greater latitude in regards to being able to provide financial aid awards via scholarships and loans. And so in many instances, not 100% of the time, but in many instances, we can whittle that gap down to zero. And so in this example, the total cost to the parent, because we were able to completely absorb that gap, is $15,000, which ended up being less than the private school when we're looking at the actual cost to the family. In both instances, the family is expected to contribute that $15,000. But with that public university, we had that $1,500 gap. And so we ended up then the actual cost to the family was $1,500 more. Well, how can it be then that private universities can be cheaper for our out-of-pocket than public universities? And one of the reasons is that there's some really strong competition in place between these schools, because the private university, they have to compete with that same student base as the less expensive public schools, but also the private universities have to compete with other private universities. And so by competing then for the same students, it gives them the leeway based upon the endowments that they've received from their alumni to do a couple of things: to give higher scholarships and also to give tuition discounts. See, private schools are governed under different rules in regards to aid eligibility. Oftentimes when contributions are made to public universities, that money oftentimes gets allocated to build a new football stadium. It's not 100% allocated over to financial aid eligibility. And within private schools, we can earmark more of those funds for student aids. So private universities, just because they're of a higher price point, don't automatically assume they're off the table. Because what we want to do is we want to look through these various formulas to figure out, well, what is your actual cost going to be versus public and private college? So understanding then the secrets to reducing the cost of college is very important. So we have these different sources. We have our free money, and these include our merit-based scholarships, our need-based financial aid, potentially grants such as a Pell Grant, and then we look to our cheap money sources such as subsidized student loans, and then we want to determine, well, what is our gap, our shortfall? And then that's when we're looking towards our college savings, other loans, maybe tapping into the equity within your home via a HELOC, potentially receiving funds from third parties, grandparents, other relatives, in regards to gifts to help meet and fill up that shortfall. All of these strategies that will increase your financial aid eligibility, they do certain things for you. Three key things. They reduce your costs, they reduce that gap, and then they also reduce that need for debt financing, which is really important because you don't want to become a college graduate and have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt following you as you're starting out your life. Or as the parent, you don't want to go into significant debt putting your child through school, because then you're sacrificing your retirement income sources as well. So the key in regard to college planning is you have to be proactive. It's just like tax planning. If you're planning right now for the 2015 tax year to offset the gains that you've already received, that boat sailed. You need to be looking what you can do for the 2016 tax year to help reduce your tax liability. The same thing holds true on the law side. We want to make sure that we have that LLC in place to protect that assets prior to the lawsuit arising. And so we're doing the same thing in regards to planning for our financial aid. But you have to have a firm grasp on all of the various forms that are required from the schools and the additional information that's required. One thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to just rush out and submit your FAFSA or your profile form without having a thorough understanding, because then once that's submitted, it locks in your EFC. And if you made an error, you're stuck unless you go to that school's financial aid board and make an appeal. So don't rush out, don't rush through the forms, understand what it is that you're filling out in regards to their forms. Understand how that EFC is actually calculated out, because there's different formulas that are used and your assets are treated differently. We have what are known as protected assets, not assets from an asset protection standpoint that are protected, but protected in regards to that it doesn't affect your your aid eligibility or kick in to your expected family contribution. And then you want to look at the various strategies, because what we want to do, again, it's not just saving, it's minimizing that underlying cost of college. So we want to look then at the strategies to increase that financial aid eligibility for our child. So by doing this, you save thousands of dollars in regards to college planning. If you don't follow these formulas, then what can end up happening is you significantly increase the underlying cost of school. So here's an example of what not to do. So we have this gap, and what ends up happening in this hypothetical is the grandparents wanting to do a good thing for their grandchild to help with college. They gift that grandchild 10 grand. That is the wrong thing to do, because remember, in regard to calculating out that EFC, it's not just the parent's income and assets. They're looking at the child's income and assets as well. And by dumping that 10 grand in cash to the grandchild, that can result in an almost or up to a $7,000 loss in financial aid. And it's because of this lack of knowledge, best intentions actually harmed the family in regard to financial aid. What they should have done is the grandparents should have waited until after college and then made that gift to help pay off student loans. Because since the school is done, we don't have any risk of lost financial aid eligibility. Other things that we can do just in regard to planning. So here we have a couple married filing jointly. Their adjusted gross income is $70,000 and their assessable assets are $400K. So one strategy in regards to aid qualification would be to reduce their adjusted gross income. And we could do that by making annual contributions to their qualified retirement accounts. And if we can get them from 70 to 50 and below, what ends up happening then for that family, they're going to qualify for the simplified EFC. And because their assets are at $400K, they're not included in that financial aid formula. And this will then allow, just by reducing that AGI, it allows the family to qualify for significantly more financial aid. And that saves not only just over 1 year, but all 4 years within school. And remember that 15, 20-year time window, just in regards to saving those funds, what type of impact that has in regards to your assets available to you to live with dignity during your retirement. So when we're looking then at high income families, what we want to look in regards to free money, because just because you make a lot of money, that doesn't mean that you're out of the game in regards to reducing your college expenses. So first, what we want to look at is those free money sources, school merit-based scholarships, if we can get tuition discounts. And then we look at filling up that gap shortfall by different types of strategies in regards to cash flow, savings, income and asset planning strategies, because remember, not all assets are calculated in for determining aid. Different things we can do in regards to tax credits and gifting. There's things that we can also do in regards to most of our clients or business owners, and these will all help then minimize that underlying gap. And it's by adding all of these together, even if you're a high income family, this can significantly reduce your out-of-pocket expenses for college. So we have these core objectives regardless of what our income levels are. We need funds for college. We have to balance that for savings for retirement. And these are two things that are also competing. We want to have the most minimal impact on our monthly cash flow as we possibly can. And ideally, we want to have an asset that's appropriate for both college and retirement. We need that flexibility in place. And because by doing this, then our return can ideally exceed the cost of college inflation. We can have our tax-deferred growth, tax-favored access for college, non-qualifying asset for financial aid. It can be used for both college and retirement, and tax-favored asset access for retirement. Well, one of the things that definitely would fit all of these different objectives is in regards to cash value life insurance. One of the things that I talk about in my book, The Private Vault, using rapidly accumulating cash value insurance policies to access funds, not only for college expenses, education expenses, but also for retirement planning, because we're not restricted in regards to what we use those funds for. If we're looking at different vehicles, then as you can see here, there's not one type of plan, whether it be a Coverdale or a 529 or a Roth or traditional or bonds or stocks or fixed annuities. Not one of them works well in both situations for both college funding, and retirement. And the reason why is because they're geared to do different things. And so these are one of the things that we want to look at then is, well, what type of options do we want to use then to maximize both college savings and retirement income streams. So there are really 10 mistakes that you want to avoid as a parent. First, thinking that you make too much money. Families with upwards of $200,000 in adjusted gross income can still qualify for aid. So make sure that regardless of what your income is, you always fill out the appropriate financial aid forms. Even though you might not qualify for need-based aid, as you're going to see, it gives you some ability then to reduce that underlying cost of tuition. Not understanding those formulas that go into the various forms. You need to know what a qualifying asset is, what qualifying income is versus non-qualifying assets and income, because those are the factors then that we look at in regards to determining what the EFC is. Applying to less than 6 colleges, there's a lot of competition out there, not only in regards to students wanting to go to schools, but schools wanting to bring the students in, because at the end of the day, it's a business. And by applying to more than 6 colleges, 10, maybe 12, you're really increasing your opportunity in regards to getting the best type of aid package possible. The fewer colleges that you apply to, then the less options that you have in regards to what aid the college is providing or potential tuition discounts. Picking the wrong schools, that's a big one. And so what you want to do is you want to ideally look for schools that are geared toward wanting your child to go to. So you want to look at schools where your child is potentially in the top 20, 25% bracket in regards to grades and test scores of the applications. Look beyond your current horizon in regards to just looking at the schools within your state. One of the things that colleges often say that sets students apart as opposed to somebody just submitting an app is you want to show an interest in that school. So demonstrate an interest. Contact the school. Go visit the school. Let the school know that you're interested in attending them. And then what we're able to do based upon that is then we can create, especially if we're accepted with multiple institutions, then we can use that as leveraging between the two schools to see if we can get better aid packages. And another big mistake that parents make is that they assume all aid is the same. It is not. Each schools have different aid packages, and so it's not the same thing across the board. And when we're doing your college solutions planning, we're covering mistakes 6 through 10 at the same time as well. So remember, even if you're affluent, you still should fill out the forms, even if you're not a candidate for need-based financial aid. And the reason why is you want the school to see your ability to pay, because schools want those full pay clients. And now they're having to compete with other institutions for those full pay clients. And it gives the school an incentive. You can use this as a leveraging device to get tuition discounts. So even though you're not qualifying for financial aid, you're reducing that underlying cost of college by getting those tuition discounts. Also, schools want full pay parents, because reality is that they're the people that are more likely to contribute to the endowments and the booster programs. And so these individuals, these families, those of you that are on this call, you are highly desirable for colleges, and the colleges will compete for you. But you need to make sure that you fill out those financial aid forms. Otherwise, the school doesn't know what your asset base is and your ability to pay. And they're the key for getting you the best deal in regard to expenses for your schools. And nowadays, many of those merit-based scholarships, they require that you fill out the financial aid forms anyways, just to qualify for the merit-based scholarships. So looking then at the college admissions and the financial aid minefield, can be an extremely overwhelming process for families. And your lack of knowledge, it can cost tens of thousands of dollars, not only in paying more than you need to for school, but lost financial aids and the loan strategies in regards to covering those shortfalls. So you want to make sure then that I would go through a list. If I was trying to do this on my own, I would first identify that candidate college. I would get those college application packages. I would get the college's individual financial aid applications. I would look for them, what type of financial aid awards are available. Then evaluate the schools, and once I have a couple of schools competing for my child, then I can use that as a negotiation for greater financial aid awards. And finding a larger selection of that college pool for my child to go through. And it's these strategies then that would help me cover any potential gap shortfall that I have between my EFC and then the actual cost of college. The FAFSA and the profile, that's just the beginning. The schools can also require all of these other, not all or a portion or every single one, it just depends upon the school, all of these other forms. It's a lot of paperwork, but it's worth it. You want to fill out all of the required forms. If you don't, then you lose out on the ability to minimize that overlying cost of college and to have free money available to you. So it's knowledge in regards to the multiple forms that have to be completed. Can you do it on your own? Yeah, sure can. As long as you have the time and you want to put in the effort and that you're really willing to become an expert in regards to the college application process and also the financial aid application process. You know, the Secretary of Education said that basically you need a PhD in regards to go through all of these forms, because there's a tremendous amount of work balanced in regards just to the time within our lives and how much of an expert that we want to be in regards to this. I would recommend that you get professional help and support, because via that professional help and support, then you can find that best college that fits your student, picking the right college for the right reasons. Is WSU the right college for my son, Tristan? It is not. I want him to go there, but it is not the right school for him because he wants to study music. And so we are going about finding schools that have different types of music programs. And so it's finding that right college for the right reason. We want to save money, and we need expert advice and knowledge in regards to reducing those college costs and creating a plan, a college plan that will give us confidence that we're not going to go broke and we're not going to have to sacrifice our retirement by putting our child or children through school. So it doesn't matter where you fall at within the spectrum. If you're in the strategic college planning phase, where we're looking at asset accumulation of assets that don't disqualify us for aid, for once then when we get into those critical high school years, especially junior, senior, and high school, where we shift over to that tactical planning phase, interacting with the schools, going through the application processes, determining what scholarships are made available, what type of tuition discounts can we get. And so planning really then takes these two different approaches. And it doesn't matter where your child is at within these phases. There is help available, and there's things that you can do then to achieve the overall best outcome for you. So the next step is what you want to do is you want to create a comprehensive report, planning report. And within that report, what we'll look at, because it's not a one size fits all, we look at your situation and we look at your student and your goals and objectives, and then the obstacles that your child may have in terms of getting into one particular school or another, and then analyzing where you're at within the process. Are you still within the strategic phase, or are you heavily within the tactical phase of the planning? You want to find that right college for the right reasons for the right price. And so what we've done with Anderson is we've teamed up with experts that guide you through the entire process, that will do coaching on test taking, on interviews, going over the essays, going over the aid applications, looking at scholarships available, taking you through that entire process. But the first part of that process is you need to understand where you're at, and you need to have a roadmap, a plan on getting you to the best position possible. So it's helpful to know what school is the best fit for your child. What schools do your child want to attend? Is your child a candidate for financial aid? How much aid or scholarships, grants would be available? What is it that you can do to increase your financial aid eligibility? And are you in a position? Is it likely that you could receive tuition discounts? And negotiation techniques and mistakes to avoid. You might not even be a parent. You might be a grandparent. Well, what is it that other family members can do to help send their grandchild or niece or nephew to school? As a parent, one of the things that I want to do is I want to maximize my education tax credit, how to leverage my business interests. Also, because I want to retire in not the too distant future, I want to look at how I can at least maintain, if not increase, my retirement contributions while my sons are in school. And look at then the best strategies in to cover that gap between the actual cost of school versus the expected family contribution. You've heard that saying, you probably remember from the Fram oil filter commercials that used to be on TV, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And the cost of procrastination is you have fewer choices for college, you have much fewer cost reducing strategies the later you wait. You're going to have a much larger gap in terms of having to fulfill that shortfall between the EFC and the actual cost of college. We definitely harm your retirement savings. And the last thing that we really want to do, or two last things, is we don't want to have our son or daughter settle for a lesser option. And we don't want them to come out of school, ideally, with just a crushing student loan debt, especially since we're seeing on average a 5% increase in regards to college tuition. And that's exceeding the underlying cost of inflation. So we want to make sure that we can keep pace with that. And so what we'll do is we'll create a custom college solutions plan for you. And what I do is I work with our clients in regard to this plan. And so first thing that we're looking at is, well, how much of the colleges that you're wanting your child to attend, how much do they cost? Based upon the projections of when it is that they're going to go to school. And within this report, then, how can you save on the cost of college? Not just saving for, but saving on the cost of college. Looking at where your student is in regards to grade points, test scores, and also where they go, what type of merit scholarships are potentially available at that institution. And then combining that within that plan of income and asset planning strategies, because this is very important in that we want to continue to increase our wealth even while our children are in school. But we need to do so in a way that doesn't potentially disqualify them or us for any type of aid. Looking at optimized model for funding in regards to that asset accumulation in a non-disqualifying manner. And then we look at, based upon where your student is and where he or she wants to go, well, what type of loan and funding options do we have? And so that report that I created for my son we're covering all of that. The report is 27 pages long when we're looking at each one of these different components. Well, you'll also receive a simplified version of the report, but we want to go into real depth just in regards to all of the different potential options that we have in regards to creating that plan and then taking potentially that next step. So our price to create a plan for you is $495. But as a way of thank you, and especially thank you for tonight dealing with the technical difficulties we encountered, we're going to reduce that price to $295. And you're going to be working with me one-on-one in regards to the creation of the plan, going over the plan, looking at potential options that you have, potentially getting you in contact with experts that all they do is navigate the financial aid minefields and scholarships, and that's what they do. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year long. So this discount for $295, it's going to be good for the next 24 hours, but you're going to need to enter in a code. And the code is 1028 webinar. Here is the website link. You can try to write this down, but I tell you what, you're going to receive an email within 30 minutes after this webinar is over that's going to have the link in it. But the most important thing is that you respond within that 24-hour period so you can get that discount in regards to the creation of the plan. So I tell you what, I learned a lot of things. Even though I have a background in this, I learned a lot of things when I created that plan for my son. Things that I wasn't quite aware of just in regards to where Tristan's at within his school career, what it is that we can do to even further minimize my out-of-pocket costs in regards to his school. So again, I want to thank you. Again, thank you for attending tonight's or this afternoon's webinar. Thank you for enduring those 5-10 minutes of technical difficulties. As always, we're always available to answer any type of questions you have. A good way to get a hold of me is via email at gboots@afsplan.com or alglaw.com. Our direct call-in to Anderson Financial is 888-473-6931. And it's not on here, but our direct call-in to Anderson Business Advisors is 800-706-4741. I wish you all the best success. If you have any questions, please let me know. And you have a great evening. Thank you.